Today's webinar, I just wanted to spend a few minutes on reporting letters, show you guys a new feature and how I'm using the viewer to help me with the drafting. So thought I'll share my screen and off we go. So we'll take Homer and I want to take you through the reporting letter, which is one of the documents that you can generate using eState. So to set up your reporting letter, and I'll start with this point, which I know everybody's going to ask me about. We are working on the letterhead issue. It is not an easy issue, and we're going to have the ability to have your letterhead generate automatically in eState, but for now it's not yet available. So go to the Documents tab, and we'll find the reporting letter. Now I'm going to show you a kind of a new feature that is only available for bigger firms, but firms that need it. And so we're going to click on the reporting letter, and it gives us the option to configure. Now, the new feature is now each of the lawyers can have their own configuration for each of the documents. So, for example, at my firm, I'm a witness usually to my documents, and I have another witness who's usually mine, and the other lawyer in our firm has two other witnesses. Well, we can set it up so we have two different inputs for each of us. But I'm just going to set up, configure the reporting letter for me, and this is how you would normally see this. So obviously, these are your defaults, the ones that you use most of the time. I send most of my report letters out by email. My reline is preparation of estate documents. I try to avoid the estate planning terms in case somebody says, well, you were doing estate planning. Now, probably I was doing some estate planning, but depends what you mean by that. So that's why I use just that I'm preparing estate documents. I'm usually the signatory, of course, for my reporting letters. If you normally hold originals, especially powers of attorney, then I would by default include escrow document, because if you're holding originals, you'll want some sort of escrow agreement that says when you can release them. If you don't normally generate or don't normally hold originals, then you probably don't want that on as a default. And then as a default, do you normally do multiple wills or normally not? Again, you can change this when you generate the document. Do you normally include registered asset designation, like beneficiary designations in your wills? Do you normally do a separate insurance declaration? Do you normally deliver the original wills to the client or hold them? And then same for each of the powers of attorney. Do you normally include powers of attorney when you're doing files for people? Those kinds of things. So for each of them. And then you have the option for powers of attorney, whether you sometimes deliver some to the client. How many copies do you deliver to the client? Do you hold any by the firm? Maybe you hold one by the firm and give one original to the client, because you can have multiple powers of attorney, of course. So that's why we have that option. And then just the fonts. So that's kind of the way we set the defaults up. So now let's go to a client and show you kind of what would happen. So let's just do Homer and Marge. We can view the reporting letter to see what it's going to look like first. So this is what it's going to look like if you want to view it. I think I'm going to just generate it and then show it to everybody. So I'm just going to go here and click on reporting letter when I'm generating my documents. Again, of course, in case I'll just go back for a second. In case you're new to it, the documents are generated with the download button. And I'm just going to close the viewer and just click on that, click on documents, click on reporting letter. And then, yes, I'm a lawyer and I can generate this. Now my defaults will automatically come up. So whatever I set up for my defaults, they will automatically appear. It's going to put in the file number for this client if you've put it in. I call this client the Alberta one because I was using it to test Alberta documents. But it's going to put in all of these typical provisions, whatever I want to do. Now I'm going to pretend I'm going to hold one and deliver one, hold one and deliver one, just to show you guys what's going to come out. So here we go. And so as you know, it generates a Word document, and it's going to generate 3 documents because I chose to use the escrow agreement. So I'm going to show you the reporting letter first, and then I'll show you the escrow agreements. So here is the document, and of course it's fully customizable. What I typically do is I just copy the whole thing and I paste it onto my letterhead. Or if you want, if you have your letterhead, you can paste the letterhead into the header, whatever way you want to do it, and so it'll be on your letterhead. So what it's going to do here is it's going to see what documents you're returning to the client, and identify how many copies. It includes your typical keep these in a safe place, telling people what happens if you can't locate the original. Here's a little trick that I put into this reporting letter automatically, is just a hint that if they ever lose the original, as a stopgap measure, send an email out to me saying they lost it, but they didn't revoke it. And then we could probably prove a copy more easily. So that's just a hint that we include automatically. And then it also explains what we're holding and the fact that we're using an escrow agreement to confirm when we can release it. This is a pretty typical, I don't know if you guys can see this okay. I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger. Let's see if I can zoom it to 200. Well, that's a bit big, but anyway, so now you can see it a little bit better. So this is your typical, reporting letter. Now, certain things are not going to change much. Just a reminders of when to review your will, and carving out the fact that we are not, and one of the key elements of a reporting letter is, to cover yourself. And this says, look, I'm not going to tell you about changes in the law. If you want to call me, feel free, and we recommend you call us, but I'm not going to reach out to you if there is a change in the law. Reminds people not to make handwritten notes on the will, which will confuse people. Talks about joint retainer, talks about revocation, that wills are revocable, and that this is not a mutual will, in essence. Then some of the data and some of the content of your reporting letter is dynamic. That is, it's based on the data of the clients. So in this case, it saw that both clients were leaving everything to each other, your sort of quote sweetheart will. And so this is just a reminder that you can do that. We didn't do a mutual will. We talked about trusts and those kinds of things, and we're not doing anything. And so you can change it. Another dynamic issue is it saw that we had legacies that were payable on the first death. So what we wanted to make sure is that we told clients that if you own everything jointly, there won't be any assets to satisfy those legacies. So it's a reminder. So that would not appear unless there was a legacy payable on the first death. Okay. Some other things it puts in is, I'm not verifying all of your information about your assets. You've sent me that. I've relied on that, etc. Then it looks at the citizenship and residency of the clients and the beneficiaries and the assets. And it'll put in a clause depending on that. In this case, one of the clients was a US citizen, and we warned them that it might raise complications. And we talked about you should contact a US lawyer to determine. It saw that some of the beneficiaries were US or foreign residents or citizens. It also saw that we own foreign assets, and it confirms that we can't give foreign advice. So that's going to be dynamic. Similarly, RSPs, for tax advice, it'll say we're not giving tax advice. RSPs, it's going to see if we included it in the will or we didn't. And if we didn't, then it'll say you told us that you not to, and that you're satisfied that you have sufficient designations on that, and talks about that as well. Similarly, because we clicked off that we used an insurance declaration, that it's going to talk about that. If we didn't, and it saw that the client had insurance, but we didn't do an insurance declaration, then it would warn the client, I confirm that you have insurance and that you didn't want us to do designations and you have satisfactory designations, but you should review those as often as you review the will as well. If it saw that you didn't, if the client didn't have any insurance, it would say, we didn't do insurance because you don't have any insurance. If you get some, you should, look at that. And then in this case, we didn't do multiple wills for the client, but it includes a clause because we didn't, that we talked about it. And it also saw that they had shares in private corporations. So it put in a clause about that. Again, it was dynamic. Same for children born out of wedlock. It would have seen what options we picked for that. And lastly, it looks at the powers of attorney and sees, did we make them effective immediately or did we trigger them on incapacity, those kinds of things. It's going to look at all the data and figure out what to do. So that is the reporting letter. And then I'll show you the escrow agreement in a second. Anybody have any questions about the reporting letter?
Hi.
Hi.
So I guess going back then, when you're picking the clauses, do you have to be so narrow when you're picking the clauses, or can it be like a general one that has covers most basic elements? I think I missed that part.
For the reporting letter?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you can, it'll do most of the stuff, but some things, like if you check that you did multiple wills, it's going to put in a clause about multiple wills. If you didn't, it would say we didn't do multiple wills. So that's really all you need to put in there. And of course, it's editable after the fact as well.
Right, yeah, okay.
So let me now show you the escrow agreements. And so highly recommend this for if you're ever holding original powers, especially powers of attorney. I mean, wills, we know when we can deliver them. We can deliver them when someone's dead or when the client asks for it, and we can deliver it to the executor named in the will or the attorney for property who's properly named. But for powers of attorney, if we don't have an escrow agreement, we don't know, we don't have protection for when we're supposed to release these. And so that's why really, if you're holding originals, I really strongly recommend escrow agreements or some agreement that confirms it or something that confirms when you can release it. So what the escrow agreement talks about is if there's, it tells you when you can release it. You can release it on my request, which is, of course, that's the client, on my request, or upon the attorney's request, if there's only one attorney, or if there's more than one attorney, and then you've got to ask the client what they would want in those circumstances. Is it a majority? Can I give it to any one of them? Do I need to have all of their consents, etc.? So that's one that you do manually with the client, and you just have, when the client is signing this, have the client, if that's relevant, have the client sign that or initial it or check it off. The second clause that is almost always requested is that we won't release it to the attorney unless there's some evidence that it's, and the wording we use in the standard escrow agreement is that it is unwise for me to manage my affairs. So it's broader than I'm incapable of managing my property, which is a statutory test, a legal test. Whereas in this case, we wanted to make it broader and say to me as the lawyer, I can release it when I satisfy myself in my discretion on whatever on the basis of such information as I deem necessary, that it's unwise for the client to manage their own affairs. And now I can release it to the attorney. And what I do have is I have the client actually initial this box. And that's often what they want. Now we are going to be making the whole reporting letter and escrow agreement customizable. So if you like different language, you'll be able to amend that, etc. And then there's a provision that if there's alternates, when can I release it to the alternate? It's when, I'm satisfied that the primary can't make a decision or can't act, etc. And then, there's all the provisions for our protection. basically, indemnities and resignation of that and all of those things. So that's what the escrow agreement, and of course it's customizable. So if you're generating it and you don't want this clause in there, or you want to change this or whatever, right now it's obviously you have to do it manually when you generate it for the client. Eventually we'll have it customizable as well. So that is how you use escrow agreements. Any questions about that? Can I just ask the people who are out there, and I did kind of show you this, the documents, how many out there would want different inputs for different lawyers in their firm? So for example, if I have 2 lawyers, I want different things in my short will that are only for me, because I do designations of beneficiaries, my partner doesn't, or I have my witnesses and my partner has different witnesses, etc. Just maybe shout out or put it in the chat and say you would be interested in that.
It wouldn't apply to me. I'm the only one with the accounts. It'd only be for me. So
right. So if you're a sole practitioner, you don't need that. Yeah. Let me just see you, Emma, just checking in here. Don't feel that the escrow agreement doesn't really deal with, I feel like the escrow agreement doesn't really deal with a situation where the attorney requested the will while the testator is still living. Well, you can't, I mean, I don't think you can deliver it to anyone without the client's consent. The only person you have a duty to deliver that to is the attorney for property. That is what our law says. So that's why we do that. But I'd welcome, Emma, your thoughts on how you would, and maybe we can take this offline, but thoughts on what you'd want to see there. I don't think you can give it to an executor, for example, while the client is alive. I don't think, I mean, I guess you might want to do that, but.
No, I think the question is that the escrow agreement doesn't apply to release the will to the attorney for property, right?
Oh, I think by law you have that obligation. That would be like the client authorizing you to do it. So under the SDA, but maybe that's great. I'll have a look at that and see if there's something more we can add. That'd be great. Thanks, Emma. And thanks, Sandra.
Jordy, do we have the same ability to edit the standard clause language in the reporting letter as other parts of other documents within this?
Not yet. You will. We're working on it. This summer, we're going to have all those documents editable. Yeah. We'll break it down into small components, and you can, you can change them as you see fit. All right, so that's that. The other thing I just wanted to show people how I've started to use the viewer, which I really wasn't thinking of using it this way, but I do use it now. So here's one of the realities of when we're doing documents with any documents, really, whether you're doing it manually or not. You have multiple drafts, right? So you generate your first draft, you make changes, and what happens to me, and I'm sure it happens to you guys, less so now with the viewer, because I check before I kind of do a review with the viewer first. But I generate a document, and then I need another clause that I didn't generate originally through eState, and now I want to generate it through eState and then put it in that draft. So I'm just using the viewer, for example, to pull that up, whatever new clause, do what I need to do in the portal, and then basically copy it. So you can do that now. We had previously prohibited you from copying anything from the viewer for reasons that we thought some people would be stealing it and not paying for it and whatever. But now we allow you to do that. So you can just go in here and say, okay, this is the new clause I just generated. I just want to copy that and paste it into my original draft and replace it or whatever, and then save it as version 2. So now you can do that. You can do that once the client is unlocked. So if you're viewing it and you haven't for example, if you're on the flex plan, you haven't paid for that client or you haven't generated a document yet, then it won't let you click and paste it. But as soon as you've unlocked that client, like you've generated a summary or a document or something, now the viewer is unlocked and you can, and what I'm doing is I'm cutting and pasting it from time to time. Now, because just so you know, this is called HTML on that you can view. The viewer is, this language is not Word, it's HTML, which is what websites and are built in. And so the formatting won't work. So it won't, it won't know that this is it'll copy the A, but it won't be based on the sort of the order or anything. So you may have to do some manual, but I usually just cut the actual clause that I want and just paste it in wherever you want. So.
Jordy, the problem I've noticed that when I do a will, I generate from eState, but then I make significant manual drafting of something afterwards. If it involves a significant change, then the guide gets screwed up. It doesn't coordinate or synchronize properly. And I don't know if there's any possible way to deal with that, but
well,
issue.
It's not going to know what clauses you put in. I mean, so it would still represent, it would still cover the clauses that that you didn't change the order. Like even it'll update the order and the paragraph references and all of that. But if you put in a brand new section, it's not going to, it obviously doesn't know about that.
Yeah, well, the numbering references will be out of whack.
Shouldn't be.
Well, if you put in a new paragraph,
yeah,
the like,
I'll show you. Let me just show
you something that the guide you can, like, without going back to eState and generating it over again.
Let me show you
language that isn't a clause that you pick from eState or eState generates and involves.
Let me show you. Let me
or adding another paragraph. Then
so let me just show you.
References out of whack.
Okay, so let me show you. So here, as an example, okay, it's going to list all the paragraphs, right? Let's say 13 is, you have descendants, okay? If I add a new paragraph in here as number 11, let's say, okay, or I paste it in or whatever, okay. Now, when I go to the guide and I update, so you have to update it, right? So you do I don't know if you know about updating, but Control-Shift-5 will highlight the whole thing and you press F9. Now it's going to update the paragraph numbers.
Okay.
So it will automatically, so it didn't know about that new paragraph 11, right? Obviously, but all the other paragraphs are going to be automatically updated.
Okay, that's great. I didn't know the select all and update worked for that kind of thing.
Yeah, it'll because they're all bookmarked, so they all take you to directly that paragraph. Like if I click here, it's going to take me right to that paragraph. Yeah, so that's and here's the instructions if you're not sure, but I do this every time because don't forget it might be cross-referencing things too, right? So that's the advantage is eState doesn't. The numbering and the references are not manual, they're dynamic. So you don't make a mistake. So I always do the I forget what it's called, Control A and then F9, and it's going to make sure that any updating, any paragraph references are going to be properly linked.
Okay, that's great. I didn't realize that. Worked with the guide part as well as the body.
Yeah, it works the whole thing because it's all dynamic. It's all based on where that paragraph happens to be. Yeah. But thank you very much, John, for that, because I'm sure if you had that problem, many other people had it. So that's important. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you again if you're going to make the Homer samples available to us to play around with.
The like a sample client?
Well, yeah, like these kind of dummy clients that we can experiment with as kind of learning more about how to use
Yes,
program
good.
for different types of situations.
Good idea. I'm going to talk to Michaela and I are going to talk to our dev people and see, because we can export clients from one person to another. Did I mention that? I don't know if I ever mentioned that, but now you can, like if, and it's mostly for financial advisors, they might collect all the data and then send it over to you to work on the plan, or they may have started the plan and send it over to you to work on it some more. You can import and export clients from one firm to another.
Yeah.
So that might be the way we do that, but I'll definitely ask our dev people.
I'd like to see if you could make samples for different situations, like you've got your Homer Simpson family when it's a blended family and when it's a straightforward or normal family, if you call it that, 2 or 3 or maybe more that
Sure.
people could really work with the program when they're have the time to play around with it and find its capabilities better. And
Sure. That's great, John. I will definitely talk about that, because we can do that. And sorry, Maria, did you want me to show something again? Maybe just unmute, and if there was something you wanted to see again, happy to do that.
No, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's the control. I don't know if it was updating the fields, but always update the fields, right? Because especially if you've changed something, it's going to know that the cross-referencing is going to automatically be updated and you won't make a mistake. So, James, the feature is kind of unofficially launched. So I don't even know if it's in everybody's portal, but let me just show it to you in case I didn't. So here, let's say I've got Sam Smith here and I want to send it to another firm. I can share it, put in the name of the user that the other eState lawyer, wherever they are, and it'll automatically go to them and they can accept it. And now they have a copy of it. You have a copy. Now they're not synced automatically. So that's important because we didn't want to do that. So that you'd have to sync, you'd have to send it back to the other person. So that's the idea. That's basically, we did that for financial advisors to be able to easily share files with lawyers who can finalize things and work with the client. So
do the financial advisors have to have their own license to eState?
Yes.
Okay. So we can't use this to have clients have their financial advisor fill in their complex asset situation.
Oh, you could send it. You could send the questionnaire to the financial advisor, which sometimes I do, and by putting in their email, the financial advisor's email, and it'll go to them, and they can fill in all that information.
So we have to make them like a client.
Well, you would just add their email in essence.
So we can add a person who's not a client with their email, and
no, you'd add the client. So let me just show you. You'd add the client's name in here, but the email, whoever you want to fill in the questionnaire, do that.
Right. Okay.
And I do that occasionally, but does the export send all the data? Yeah, it sends, you take whatever your client, so you can send the client and the spouse, whatever you're sending, the whole file in essence goes. Yeah. So you can choose to include the spouse, you can include the notes that you've taken, or exclude the notes. That's the only one that option. But documents, it doesn't, because the documents are not saved in eState, they're saved on your computer. So you're not, those aren't exported. Question about email modified for questionnaire to go from advisor to client to assist with onboarding. I'm not sure what exactly to go from the advisor to the client. Not yet. I think I understand that, but I'm not 100% sure. But if James, if you want to talk after, I'm happy to do that. It's 1 o'clock, everybody. I didn't think this was going to take the whole period, so I'm glad. But I hope that was helpful. If you find things, John, like John had, where he was like, this isn't working right. Like, probably we have a solution, or it's made like there's something we're missing, because I wouldn't want it to not work for me because I use it too. So that's the kind of stuff, check in. If something just doesn't, doesn't make sense, let us know. And if it's an issue, we'll fix it. And if it's a new feature, we'll build it. And if it's something you just weren't aware of, we'll let you know about it. So that's the idea. Thank you, everybody. And hope to see you guys on Thursday. Ian and Susanna are on. So we'll see you then. Thanks, guys.